Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. Okay, so, wow, right, that's Bob Camblin for you, huh?
Deep stuff, huh?
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today on the deep dive. You ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, so today we're taking you on a journey into the world of artist Bob Camblin.
A singular artist.
Absolutely. This guy's work is, well, it's all over the place, literally and figuratively, but it's sought after, it's valued. There's something about it, you know?
Yeah, and thankfully for us, for this deep dive, we've got a ton of cool stuff to work with. We've got Camblin's own word, like actual notes he wrote.
Yeah, and a full-on biography, like his whole life story.
In his book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, which is like, well, it's Camblin in a nutshell. Art, philosophy, it's all there.
Oh, and there's this YouTube video that breaks down one of his most famous pieces, The Cycle of Renewal.
And to add some historical flavor, we've got book reviews and, get this, personal stories from people who knew him.
Right, so it's not just some dry academic take. We're getting, like, the real Camblin.
And I gotta say, going through all this, it really struck me how personal it all is.
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's not like we're just reading some art critic's take. We're getting right into Camblin's head, you know? We're seeing how his work hit people, like it really hit them. It makes you feel like you're getting to know him, you know, the real guy, not just the famous artist.
Exactly, and I think that makes our deep dive even more exciting. It's like we're on this journey of discovery with Camblin.
Totally. And that's exactly what we want for you guys listening too. Like our goal today is to kind of like map out Camblin's autistic philosophy, the themes that keep popping up in his work, and hopefully help you have those aha moments, you know, those sparks of understanding about creativity, about how we see the world, about what it means to be human.
And we're going to try to do that without, like, drowning you in information.
Right. No information overload here, just pure distilled Camblin. So let's start with the man himself. Bob Camblin, a guy who, even though he's like famous in the art world, is still kind of an enigma.
Yeah, total enigma.
Yeah.
I mean, his work is everywhere, but he himself is like this mystery.
Right. So he was born in Oklahoma in 1928, and he started out at the Kansas City Art Institute. So, you know, solid art school background.
Right, classic art education, honing his skills, and it paid off big time. I mean, he snagged a Fulbright scholarship to Italy.
No small feat, right. Italy, I mean, come on, the art, the history, that had to be like life-changing for him.
You're telling me, imagine being surrounded by the masters, the greats of representational art, the Impressionists.
Yeah.
The biography talks about how much he absorbed all that, you know?
Yeah, I bet. Soaking it all up. Which makes sense because later on he goes on to teach at some pretty big deal places like the Ringling School of Art, University of Illinois, and then like the big one, Rice University.
Yeah, he was entrenched in the art world, no doubt.
Totally. But then, and this is where it gets really wild, in 1976, he just up and leaves it all behind.
Just like that. Drops the stability, the prestige, the whole academic thing.
Yeah, just decides, nope, I'm going to be a nomad. I'm going to live for my art. Like, how brave is that? To just ditch the safe path and chase his passion, you know? Makes you wonder what kind of structures we all hold on to in our lives that maybe we should be questioning.
Totally. Like, what boxes are we trapping ourselves in?
Yeah.
What would it take for us to, you know, break free and really pursue our own creative callings?
Deep thoughts, right. So he's traveling all over Italy, France, Ireland, Mexico, even hit up the South Pacific.
The biography really highlights these journeys, and you can only imagine the impact they had on him.
Right.
All those different cultures, different ways of seeing the world feeding into his art.
Right. And what's really cool is that we have access to this collection of his drawings and writings from like 1950 to 1974. And these weren't meant for the public, right? They were just for him.
Totally. Like these were his private thoughts, his artistic experiments just flowing out of him.
Yeah, pure, unfiltered Camblin, no pressure, no audience, just the creative process itself.
Exactly. And the biography really stresses that. These were spontaneous expressions, not meant for prying eyes. So it's like we're getting this like privileged look into the very heart of his creativity, you know, before it was shaped for the public.
Totally. And that's where we really start to uncover some of those recurring themes, the ideas that he keeps coming back to, both in his art and his writings.
Okay, so one thing that really jumped out at me was his whole take on common sense and the perfectly average.
Right, like finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Exactly. And he talks about this gray area where science and magic kind of meet.
Yeah, like he's not choosing sides, right? He's looking for the connections, the overlap, the space where those seemingly opposite things can coexist.
Totally. He says he's hoping to see science and magic meet in a bright gray. Like, that's so Camblin, right? Rejecting the black and white, embracing the nuance.
Totally. And that really ties into his emphasis on intuition, doesn't it? Like that quote, the sixth sense is to be, without a doubt, senza dubio.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying real knowledge, real certainty, it comes from a deeper place, not just your head.
Yeah, like that gut feeling, that unshakable knowing, that's where the truth lies.
It's like he's tapping into those Eastern philosophies, those traditions that value direct experience, that inner knowing.
Right. And we also see this deep connection to nature in his writing, like this idea of finding something in nature that makes you whole and then surrendering to it.
Letting go of control, right?
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to be part of something bigger.
Yeah, and that's a big one for him, this concept of surrender. Like, it's not weakness, it's about recognizing your place in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah, like the Zen idea of non-action, flowing with the current, not fighting against it.
Well, which is interesting because he also talks a lot about like balance, patience, and freedom.
Okay, how do those all fit together? They seem kind of like contradictory.
Right. Like, how can you be patient and free?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I think maybe he's saying that true freedom, like real freedom, comes from a certain kind of patience, like knowing when to act, when to wait, when to let go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like not forcing things, but trusting the process.
Right. And then there's his take on the evolution of art, how it goes from art for art's sake to art for life's sake, or even like art as a means of survival.
Right, like art isn't just some like detached thing. It's interwoven with life.
Yeah.
It helps us make sense of the world. It helps us cope.
Totally. And then there's one quote that like blew my mind. Step off the train of thought to find the power that is no power, to do the work that is not work, to laugh the true laugh. Bending is not bowing.
Whoa. Okay, unpacking that. Step off the train of thought, like get out of your head, Ray.
Right.
Find the power that is no power, like embrace vulnerability maybe. Do the work that is not work, that sounds like effortless action.
And bending is not bowing, like adapting, staying flexible, but not losing yourself.
That's deep. Like how much of our lives are spent on that train of thought? Just chugging along on autopilot. What would it mean to like actually step off and experience the world in a totally different way?
Right. And then there's this whole reflection on the difference between arguing and actually communicating.
Oh yeah, that one hit home.
Oh.
Like how much of our communication is just like noise, just trying to be right instead of actually understanding each other.
Totally. And then there's this beautiful image he talks about, like the cosmos waving to him through nature.
Oh yeah, the rustling leaves, the sunlight. It's like the universe is speaking to him.
I love that. It's like this reminder that we're not separate from the world around us. We're all connected, you know?
Yeah, and it's not just some abstract idea. It's something he feels, he experiences.
Totally. And Camblin, he's not afraid to tackle the big questions either. He talks about change, evolution, the inevitability of being misunderstood.
He's wrestling with those fundamental human experiences, trying to understand what it means to be alive, to be part of this constantly changing world.
Right. And those paradoxical statements he throws out, like, when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. Like, how do you even wrap your head around that?
I know, right? It's like he's messing with our brains, making us question everything.
Totally. But I think maybe it's about recognizing those different modes of being, you know? Like, there's a time for deep thought and a time for decisive action.
Yeah, and maybe trying to do both at once just leads to, like, chaos.
Right. Like, you got to pick your lane, man.
For sure. So we've got a pretty solid grasp on Camblin's philosophy now, right? But how does all this actually play out in his art? Like, what are we seeing?
Well, let's take a look at one of his most iconic pieces, the Eagle lithograph from his Bestiary collection. This one gets analyzed in both Zen and the Art of Enlightenment and that cycle of renewal video.
Yeah, and this is where those philosophical ideas we just talked about start to take visual form.
Okay, so describe it for us.
All right, so picture this. It's a super detailed ink drawing of an eagle, wings spread wide. But here's the thing. Inside the feathers, there are all these tiny images.
What, like inside the feathers?
Yep, like faces, bones, all kinds of symbols, all packed in there.
So it's not just like a realistic eagle drawing?
Nope, it's got that realistic base, but then it goes all surreal on you with those details.
Very Camblin.
Right. And those tiny images, they're not just random. They're loaded with meaning, especially within that Zen framework.
So what do they symbolize?
Well, the eagle itself, or sometimes it's a vulture, can represent impermanence, the cycle of life and death. Like the bird scavenges, it feeds on what passed, you know?
Mm.
And those tiny images within the feathers, they're like all the experiences, all the moments that make up a life, you know, all fleeting, all passing.
Right, like this huge tapestry of existence all contained within this one powerful image.
Exactly. And that cycle of renewal video
Mhm.
really emphasizes that, you know? He talks about how each feather is like a memory, a reminder of all the lives that have come and gone. It's deep, man.
Deep, for sure. And there's also a connection to the I Ching, right? Specifically hexagram 23, splitting apart.
Right. So the I Ching, it's this ancient Chinese text, kind of like a divination tool, a way to get insight. And hexagram 23, it's all about decay, breaking down like the old structures falling apart.
But not in a bad way. Right.
Right. It's like this is a necessary stage, you know, got to clear out the old to make way for the new. And that ties into the whole eagle image, right? Like those layers of symbolism, they're showing us that decay is part of the process. It's what leads to renewal.
Right. Letting go of what's no longer serving us, making space for new beginnings. And style-wise, the book mentions that the eagle piece kind of echoes Dürer with that crazy attention to detail, but also Max Ernst, who was all about surrealism.
Yeah, so you've got that blend of precision and dreamlike imagery, that real meets unreal vibe.
Very Camblin, as always.
Mhm.
So, moving beyond the eagle, there are other recurring symbols that pop up in his work, right?
Oh, yeah, tons. Like the figure four trap, which
Yeah.
is mentioned in a book review of The Art of Everything.
Okay, what's that all about?
Well, a figure four trap, it's like a survival thing. You know, you use it to catch small animals. But Camblin, he elevates it, turns it into this symbol of all the things that can trap us, whether we realize it or not.
Interesting. Like our own internal traps or fears or limiting beliefs, but also the external traps, the systems that hold us back.
Right. And then you've got like a tattooed arm, which represents unspoken family history.
Heavy stuff, like all that baggage we carry from the past, whether we acknowledge it or not.
Totally. And then there's the frog, which, you know, it's a classic Zen symbol of stillness, being present.
Yeah, like that quiet observation, being fully in the moment.
And then the book review also talks about how Camblin plays with paradoxes in his art, like traps that don't trap, structures that can't move, objects that disappear.
Wait, what? How do you have a trap that doesn't trap?
That's the thing. He's messing with our expectations, forcing us to question what we think we know.
So it's not just about the symbols themselves, it's about how he uses them, how he makes us think.
Exactly. He's exploring themes of illusion, the nature of reality, the
Yeah.
limitations of our perception, like how much of what we think is real is actually just like a construct, you know?
Whoa, mind blown. And that stillness we see in some of his pieces, is that about being stuck or finding peace?
It's both, maybe, or neither. That's the brilliance, right? It's open to interpretation.
So it depends on the viewer, their own state of mind.
Exactly. And the biography also talks about this phase where he was really into scarecrows, starting around 1967. Apparently, he was inspired by Günter Grass.
Okay, but what do scarecrows represent?
Well, for Camblin, they symbolized spring, renewal, like that new life bursting forth.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it ties into this broader theme of evolution and metamorphosis that he explored, you know, with images like lobster shells, puppets, even larva shells, all about transformation.
Right, like shedding the old, embracing the new. And then there's his use of text within his drawings, which, according to the biography, isn't always straightforward.
Oh, yeah, sometimes it's like a disguise,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a clue. It's like he's referencing Tom Wolfe's idea of the painted word, where the text itself becomes part of the art.
So we got to pay attention to those words, too.
Totally. It's another layer of the puzzle, you know, another way for him to mess with our minds.
Right. We got
Yeah.
to be active viewers, engaged, looking for those hidden connections.
Exactly. He's giving us these data problems, these little mysteries to solve.
And it's all built on his early work, which was actually focused on social protest.
Yeah, but later on, it evolved, right? It became this mix of social realism and non-objectivity.
Interesting. So he was engaged with the world around him, but also exploring those deeper, more abstract ideas.
Totally. And his time in Italy, that really seeped into his art too. Like, the book mentions how he drew inspiration from the Uffizi Gallery and even the Capuchin catacombs.
Whoa, the catacombs, that's a bit dark, even for Camblin.
Right. But that's part of his thing, you know, exploring the full spectrum of human experience, the light and the shadow.
Totally. And later on, he shifts to these large-scale drawings, like treating the drawings as the final piece, not just sketches.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that he incorporated his corrections into the finished pieces.
So he's not trying to hide the process, right? He's embracing the imperfections.
Totally. And in the 1960s, he really focused on blending the poetic and the emotional in his work. The book even mentions artists like Hugo van der Goghs and Goya as influences.
So he's drawing on art history, but also pushing boundaries, trying to capture those deep human feelings.
Yeah, like going beyond just representing the world, trying to express something deeper, something more universal.
And then there's his mouches volantes style in the 1980s.
Oh yeah, mouches volantes, which
Yeah.
basically means like flying flies. It refers to those floaters you sometimes see in your vision, those little dots and squiggles.
So he's taking this visual phenomenon and turning it into art.
Yep, and he was working with Nancy Giordano during this period. They used dots and dashes to create optical illusions, kind of like Escher and Dali.
Whoa, trippy. So again, playing with perception, messing with our minds.
Totally. And then in his later work, we see these recurring images, puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky water. And the book connects these to figures like Freud, de Chirico, Grunewald, Kazantzakis, even Günter Grass.
So there are all these layers of meaning, these potential interpretations, and it's up to the viewer to make those connections, right?
Exactly. He's not giving us easy answers. He's inviting us to participate, to bring our own knowledge and experiences to the table.
Yeah, and the biography even says that he intentionally hid meanings in his work, like little secrets for us to discover.
Like a treasure hunt, right? The more you look, the more you find. So I think it's safe to say that Camblin wasn't just about, like, creating pretty pictures, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
There was a real depth, a complexity, a constant questioning.
Right. And we can't forget about his collaborative work, like his projects with Earl Staley and Joe Tate, B&E Productions, and the holding firm.
Yeah, so he wasn't just this solitary artist. He believed in the power of working together.
Totally. And these collaborations, they weren't about, like, one person's vision. They were about the process, about that creative exchange.
And the fact that he often signed his work as anonymous, that really speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, like the ego takes a back seat, the art comes first, and of course there's his teaching career.
Right. He was dedicated to sharing his knowledge, his way of seeing the world.
And his quote about his 3 years teaching at Rice, it's just classic Camblin, isn't it? The first year, I assumed. The second year, I capitulated.
Ooh.
The third year, I'm teaching. Like, he went on a journey, man.
He went from thinking he had all the answers to actually engaging with his students, meeting them where they were at.
And the biography mentions how the chair at Rice would sometimes hire teachers whose styles clashed with Camblin's.
Oh, interesting. Like creating some friction, some creative tension.
Right. Maybe that was part of his own learning process, too.
And we see this emphasis on like opening perception, not closing it.
Right. Don't just take things at face value. Question everything.
And he talks about the difference between believing and knowing. Like that true knowing comes from direct experience, like what mystics talk about.
It's not about blind faith. It's about experiencing truth for yourself.
Hmm.
And this quote, oh man, it's one of my favorites. Resist learning, learn to fail,
Hmm.
learn to relax, learn to feel, learn how to really think.
Right. It's like screw rote memorization, embrace the messy experiential side of learning. Like, what does it mean to truly think, you know? Not just regurgitate information, but actually engage with ideas, grapple with them, make them your own.
Yeah, that's the real challenge, isn't it? To move beyond just consuming information to actually integrating it, making it part of who we are. And Camblin says, I didn't learn anything new, but I know a lot more now.
So it's not about acquiring more facts, it's about deepening our understanding.
Exactly. And Camblin, he had some thoughts about the art world of his time too, which he called the consumer art era.
Right, like he saw this focus on shock value, on instant recognition, and he wasn't really a fan.
No, he was all about substance, about art that makes you think, art that stays with you. He called out the obsession with trends and gimmicks.
Right, like he wasn't chasing fads, he was trying to create something timeless.
Totally. And his views on the relationship between artists and galleries and museums, that was interesting too. Like, he saw it as a partnership, a mix of trust and commerce.
Right, but he also resisted the idea of just painting for money.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there had to be something more, some deeper motivation.
He had integrity, that's for sure, and he had this idea that an artist's exhibition should be like a complete environment, a world unto itself, free from comparison and competition.
Yeah, like stepping into the artist's mind, experiencing their creative process firsthand.
And he believed in faith and good work, like those were the anchors in a chaotic world.
Hard work and a belief in something bigger than yourself.
Right, and his whole concept of turning a stumbling block into a stepping stone, which he literally depicted in his paintings of jars of water.
Yeah, taking those obstacles, those challenges, and using them to grow, to learn, to evolve.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin, what kind of legacy did he leave behind? How did he impact the art world?
Well, the quotes from other artists really say it all.
Yeah, the people who knew him, who worked with him, they paint a pretty clear picture.
Like Pete Gershon called him one of Boomtown Houston's most committed, talented, and enigmatic artists, even a mystical trickster figure.
And Georgia Jackson Jr. said his art was a portal into truly experiencing art.
And his friend Earl Staley, he credits Camblin with teaching him how to draw and compose.
Yeah, and Penny Serling talked about his questioning mind, his love for collaboration. And Carolyn Farb, she emphasized how personal his work was, how it brought joy to the people who collected it.
Yeah, and Earl Staley's personal stories about Camblin, those are really special. Like, you get a glimpse of the man behind the art.
Totally. And it's interesting that later on, Camblin moved to Oregon and Louisiana, kind of retreated from the Houston art scene.
Yeah, like, he was always searching, always seeking new inspiration. And the fact that there have been efforts to organize a retrospective of his work, that shows that he's still relevant. His work still resonates.
Absolutely. So in the end, Bob Camblin was all about challenging how we see the world, prompting us to think deeply, to embrace those paradoxes, to find meaning in the everyday.
And that's the gift he leaves us with, right? That invitation to see things differently, to question our assumptions, to embrace the mystery.
Totally. So as you go about your day, think about what trains of thought you might need to step off, what hidden layers might be waiting to be discovered in your own life.
And in a world that's always pushing for quick answers, for easy solutions, what happens when we embrace those mysteries, those unanswered questions? Could that be the key to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us?
That's something to ponder, for sure. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the incredible world of Bob Camblin. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.